And just like that, we're back. Can you believe it? For me, my little Smisky, who's helping me hold the mic for all of my videos, keeps me less nervous, and people ask me why I'm so comfortable with the camera. I have a Smisky. This seat is actually not very comfortable, so if you guys see me switching positions later. Hello, I'm SJ, a Filipino Chinese reader living in Bangkok, and I used to have a YouTube, which I just abandoned because I moved countries and I just got very busy. Also, this seat is very uncomfortable, so if you guys see me adjusting or literally just changing positions or spots, we don't talk about it. Anyway, welcome to our usual spot where good stories linger. And I've made this decision to call everything that I document and I share as part of our usual spot where people go to be comfortable and share the things that they love and just be regulars, some place that just comes naturally to you. This is going to be a very unstructured return back to YouTube. I enjoyed being here 2.5 years ago. So if you guys were listening to me yap back at the end of 2022 and at the start of 2023, welcome back. It is nice to see you again. And let me know in the comments if you guys if you've watched my past videos, which I archived for now, just to give myself a clean slate. And if you're new here, welcome. This is a space where we talk about everything that we love. It is our usual spot. It is a place where we are comfortable and chill and just enjoy all the nice things in life. And I need to tell you guys that I made this decision to revive my YouTube account just 3 days ago. I'm filming this today, editing it hopefully tonight, and posting by tomorrow. So if it's your first time here, hi, hello, welcome to our usual spot. And if you were here 2.5 years ago when I tried vlogging and I had a little bit of time, welcome back. I hope you make your presence known and it would be nice to talk to you. We're trying it again. I enjoy yapping about books and movies and everything that I love, but I also have a full-time job and a whole life outside of this, so we'll see how this goes. There's not going to be any structure here, especially this first video, guys. I did not plan anything. There's no script, there's nothing. We are going to yap about my May reads as unstructuredly as we can. This is me being vulnerable, guys. There's not going to be any schedule, at least for the coming weeks, in terms of when I will post, what I will be posting about. I will want this to come naturally to me, and when I find my rhythm, if I do find my rhythm, hopefully you guys can expect some form of routine here. But for now, just enjoy, or I hope you do, when I do get to post. It's weird doing long form again because I realize I can yap. I can continue talking and talking and talking. And I know you guys can click out, but I trust you guys. But also, feel free. So today we are talking about my May reads, and we read quite a couple of books. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then I have an audiobook that I listened to, which makes it 9. So let's talk about it. By the way, I read 8 books. This last one, I am halfway through. Guys, I'm a little nervous. I realize I have no script, and I have to rely on my memory to yap about all of these, and I hope I do all of these books justice. First book I read this month is On the Calculation of Volume by Solvej, translated from the Danish. And it's funny starting this revival of my YouTube with a book that is the second part of a series, which makes it a bit difficult to talk about plot-wise because I don't want to spoil the first book. But essentially it is about a woman who is stuck on the same day, November 18th, and her trying to figure out the logic of it. Why it happened, how does she deal with her new life? Is there a way to escape it? The funny thing with this book is if I made this video 2 days ago, I would have given this second book 3.75 stars. But I read a review a couple days back that made me really think about this second edition. So for context, the On the Calculation of a Volume is a very slow meditative novel. Some people would find it boring, repetitive, and just get to the point. But I love slow books. I love books that really pay attention to detail and observe in a beautiful prose manner, not in a very detailed tell me everything manner. And I think Solvej does that very effectively. And I love that in book one. I gave book one 4.5 out of 5 stars. And there was a passivity to her approach to being stuck on the same day that I absolutely adore. Now, after I think 2 to 3 weeks, I read book two, which might have been a bad idea because it doesn't give the book that enough space to breathe. And at one point, reading book two, I started feeling a little bit of repetitiveness, which maybe is my fault for reading it so close to each other, but it was salvaged by a very brilliant ending. If book one focuses on her passivity when it comes to approaching this new life of hers, book two is her trying to find a way, her being a bit more of an active participant to her life. And that is an observation that I read. I need to remember the review of that person. I will link it if I find it. That really changed my perspective on this book. And I've been thinking about it for the past 3 days and how much it changes my perspective on how this book goes. Because it's not a bad book. It's just, it makes me wonder how the author is going to make this into a 7-part series, which she kind of answers at the very end of this book with the way she ends it, and makes me intrigued for the third book. But it wasn't until that review that I read that made me appreciate how this differs from book one and how effective of a book it still is. So I might give it a reread sometime this year before I read book three. But I think if I can trust my instincts, I think I will like it a lot better the second time around. Next is Small Boat by Vincent Delecroix, which is, unpopular opinion, I think 3 out of 5 stars. This is a book translated from the French and I think one of the favorites for International Booker Prize, which we know now it didn't win. I have no problems with that. I have an unpopular opinion on. I know, at least within my circle, this book gets a lot of love, but I know myself enough, and heading into this book, I know it wasn't going to be a favorite. Quick introduction. This book, Small Boat, is about a woman who is examining her conscience and whether she is complicit to a tragedy that happens in the English-French channel. And the book is primarily that. Maybe 3/5 of this book is the Coast Guard herself being interviewed and asked why she did the things that she did and does she feel any responsibility for what happened. And the thing I really need to land here is I understand that the theme and the importance of this book is there. It is there. It is worthy of being nominated and being shortlisted. But to me as a reader, I've come to understand that I don't love books that are so tightly written, restrained, and just doesn't leave me a lot to chew on because they're sometimes so minimalistic and so single-minded on what they're trying to land that I am left with nothing. I understand what you're trying to say and I understand its importance, but as a reader, I wish Vincent gave the story some room to breathe. And I know to some people the tightness of it is what makes it work, but to me the story just didn't breathe enough. And I didn't really emotionally connect, and I know the Coast Guard is supposed to be unlikable, but at one point it was just annoying and repetitive, and it wasn't effective for me. And that's why I give it 3 out of 5 stars, because I do see the value in it, but I don't think the execution is to my preference. Next, I read A Great Big Beautiful Life, which I'll put here because I did not have a physical copy of it. I read it on audiobook while I was going on my runs. And this is my third Emily Henry book after Book Lovers and Beach Read. And unfortunately, I think this might be my least favorite. I also gave it 3 out of 5 stars. 3 out of 5 stars because it was fun, it was entertaining. I was really listening to it on my runs, and it helps me kind of just not get too focused on how tired I am. But unfortunately, A Great Big Beautiful Life, I think, needed a lot of trimming down. There are 2 alternating stories within it, 2 different love stories that I see the intention didn't work quite well. It felt too separate, too distinct from each other. One part of it felt like a derivative of Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I think did the story much more effectively, while the other, the main romance, I guess, just felt so neatly tied, and there was not a lot of tension. There was romance, definitely, but I just didn't care for them. And there were parts of the book that I just wanted to make my audiobook like 2.5 times. Guys, get to the point. I do not this It was fun and entertaining, but sometimes it was also just tedious. So I think this might be my least favorite Emily Henry that I've read because I absolutely love Beach Read. Beach Read I think is my favorite of the three that I've read. Book Lovers was okay. It was a great romance, but this one just didn't work quite well. It felt rushed, it felt bloated, it felt like it could be trimmed in so many different parts. Next, we have Transit by Rachel Cusk, which I don't think I'll have a lot to say about. Oh my gosh, this reading month isn't the best so far. I also gave 3 out of 5 stars. Guys, if I ever change my ratings in the future, do not call me out. Transit is the second book of Rachel Cusk's trilogy. The first one was Outline, which, now that I'm thinking about it, I am wondering whether I enjoyed Outline. I gave Outline 4 out of 5 stars because the book was good or because I was reading it in Copenhagen during the summer with clear skies and I was just, I don't know, hypnotized. Because I do understand that Rachel Cusk is a brilliant writer. She writes human conversations and understands that sometimes more than we know ourselves through the way we interact with other people. And that's an interesting observation that I have with her writing is she's brilliant at writing conversations, but the emotions of it is just never landing with me. I just never care. I just never care. I know what I like with the prose that I read, and Rachel Cusk is unfortunately, after reading this one, might not be my favorite. Outline was still good. There was some novelty to it, but by the time I was reading this, I just wanted, and I did finish it. But there were moments of brilliance, but not enough to make me really enjoy the book. We are now heading to good territory. I just realized the first half of the month was mostly 3.5 to 3.75 stars, but we're now going to I think all of these will be 4 stars and above. Next, we have Fredrik Backman's My Friends. I need to give context first that Fredrik Backman is not an author that I fell in love at first sight. I first read Anxious People a couple years ago, and it was a story. It was nice. It felt too plotty and cliche for me that even the reveals were just like, okay, that was cool, that was fun. I don't even remember my rating for it, maybe 3.5 stars, but I read Bear Town a couple years ago and I was crying at a cafe. I read Us Against You, also really brilliant. I haven't read The Winners. I'm terrified. I will leave that for when I have the time, or maybe for winter. And then I saw that Fredrik Backman released My Friends, and I had to pick it up right away. And there was a blurb at the back that just got my attention and made me want to read it ASAP, which is: the world is full of miracles, but not greater than how far a young person can be carried by someone else's belief in them. And then I love my friends. I love platonic relationships. I value my friends as much. I consider them family at this point, which I know is a cliche, but I knew that I would love this book, and that feels like an understatement because as I was reading this, so many parts of this book I didn't know coming into it. There were themes that I did not know were gonna come that shocked me while I was reading in a good way. I read this both as a physical book but also as an audiobook. So I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, and it is a story about friends and how much a person's belief can take you in this world. We see a group of friends from decades back whose love and loss were so strong and so impactful that they leave a mark on a young adult decades later. And it is a story that is so full of soul, so full of understanding of human relationships and love. And what I didn't expect was loss. How Fredrik Backman understands loss so well. And I think that became my favorite part of this book. That in a book that is so filled with beautiful friendships, beautiful loves, it is dealing with grief and loss and how we get through in this world that personally really stayed with me. And I found myself reading the last 60 pages of this during my run, and then the last 20 pages of this on the back of a motorbike on the way home from that run. And I was crying. I was crying and crying, not because I was hurting, but because I was remembering. And I am deeply, deeply thankful to Fredrik Backman for writing this book because it's a brilliant book. I still don't think that Fredrik Backman is a favorite author of mine. His style of writing can sometimes border on having too much flair for dramatic, so much beautiful one-liners that sometimes distracts me from the story, but the way he writes his characters so beautifully and so emotionally, and the way he understands people really just renders that a moot point. So might not be the best book of all time, but I really love this. 4 out of 5 stars. Not me pouring my heart out on a YouTube video. Next, we have Henry, which is a book I don't think I would have picked up if it weren't for the glowing reviews that I've been seeing everywhere, because it is a queer and modern retelling of Shakespeare's Henriade. So I grew up in Manila. I don't think any of our schools had Shakespeare in the curriculum. I have no idea what Shakespeare stories are. Sue me. So I just didn't care. Like when people talk about like if we were villains, that title of the book, being like Shakespeare adapted, blah blah blah, don't care. Means nothing to me. So I didn't really care when people were using that as a reference, but I heard queer and modern and I saw the glowing reviews, and you know what? A gorgeous cover to match, I bought it. And surprisingly, I gave this 4.5 stars. Because this book is messy. This book was far darker than I expected it to be. It is about, and let me read the blurb because I do not want to butcher the story. It is about Hal Lancaster, 22, gay Catholic, and the heir of the 16th Duke of Lancaster. And this Hal guy, he makes a lot of questionable decisions, but it's also, the author writes it with so much depth that you understand him, but it doesn't excuse his actions, which is something that I always love when I read books about complicated, morally great characters, because this book tackles some very, very deep and dark topics that even I had to take a pause while reading it. But what makes this stand out to me, at least when it comes to, let's say, tragedies as well as complicated, morally gay characters, is how the author was able to balance the humor and the dark themes so brilliantly. I was cackling on one moment, and then they're telling a story that you think is supposed to be funny, and then you process it, the story goes longer and longer, and you're like, wait, there's some deep rooted trauma there. And suddenly the humor becomes sympathy, and the sympathy becomes you scratching your head because you're like, whew. Same thing, I read as a physical book and an audiobook. The audiobook was actually quite brilliant with this one. I love the voice acting here. And I love the way they approach trauma in this book, because it is so deep and so complicated, and they didn't make it so clean cut and so wrapped up with a pretty bow. So yeah, really, really good book. Up until this point, might have been my favorite of the month, together with My Friends by Backman. And among my finished books, we're going to like 4.5 to 5 star territory. I realized the month was progressively getting better and better. Thank God. Next, we have a book that I've been waiting for 6 whole months because I can't find it in Bangkok, which is funny because this is by a Thai American author, and I wish they stocked it here. But thank you to Fourth Estate Books. I literally basically begged them to send it over to me just because I've been wanting to read this. And if that's not your sign to start a book account, I don't know what is. Basically, Rejection by Tulathimutte. The only context I had about this book is it was gross, it was disgusting, it was so culturally nuanced and so socially and digitally now. And I was like, I'm intrigued. Give it to me. Then I heard it was a short story collection, and I'm not a short story collection fan, but I keep an open mind. And boy, they were not kidding. This is a collection of stories that are so, I will check my notes from the last time I reviewed this, because I actually had to sit down and yap to my phone for maybe 30 minutes just to word vomit my thoughts and then write it into a review, which I post on my IG stories. I'm sorry, I said I was gonna yap unstructurally, but this book deserves my clear thoughts. So If Perfection by Latronica, which is a book I love and I read back in March, is a book that puts a mirror up to society and shows us how we're behaving right now that we probably don't realize, or we do, but we just choose to ignore it. Rejection takes its worst, darkest, and most disorienting parts for us to see and slaps us in the face with it. Rejection is a collection of short stories that is brutally self aware and introduces characters that are plagued by feelings of loneliness, and as per the title, rejection, and runs wild with it. There is a level of detail and granularity to his observation that makes it so present as a novel. The way they talk, the way they cope, the way they approach their relationships with other people, their hopes and their fears, and the way he observes and critiques the social and digital structures of today's society is so piercing that you just can't look away. You might think you know where Tony Tulathimutte is taking his story. Best believe that you don't. Now that we have the clear thoughts out of the way, I just wanted to say that this was great fun to read. Is it wrong to say sometimes that I felt called out because of how gross and weird and disturbing this is? But not in like the gross and weird disturbing parts, but just so how well he understands today's generation, but also like the millennials and the way we behave, the way we type, the way we act. It's just like, bro, chill. A whole lot of fun, but be warned, it gets again quite gross and disgusting, but wonderful observations and critiques of today's society. I don't know if I'm ready to talk about this next book because I finished it 30 minutes ago. And I spent my morning crying in bed. I don't read at home, but this book is not a book that I could read outside just because I tried to. I tried to read it outside yesterday and I was tearing up in public at a cafe. And I might not care what people think about me, but I care what I think about me. So the next book is Things in Nature Merely Grow by Yiyun. I haven't written my review on this. I haven't had the time to process this book, and I will take my time trying to explain this. So maybe I'll start with context first. Things in Nature Merely Grow is Yiyun Lee's nonfiction book that she dedicates to her son James that died from the S word. I'm only saying S word just because I don't think YouTube will allow me to say it. But the larger context to this is Yiyun Lee and her husband are two parents, and they have two kids, Vincent and James, and both of them, unfortunately, died by the S word. One in 2017 and one in 2024. And this book specifically is the book that she wrote after the death of James. It puts a stop to the emotion. Oh, I realize she kind of mentions it at the blurb. This is a book for James, but it is not a book about grieving or mourning. As Lee writes, the verb that does not die is to be. Vincent was and is and will always be Vincent. James was and is and always be James. We were and are and will always be their parents. There's no now and then, now and later, only now and now and now and now. This book is supposed to be written from the perspective of thinking. So she was talking about when Vincent died in 2017, she wrote Where Reasons End, which I read way back and loved, about a mom and her dead son talking to each other as a work of fiction, because Vincent, as her son, was so full of feelings and so full of life, but she cannot do the same for James. James is for thinking. James is for facts. And try as she might, she doesn't think she will ever be able to write anything that will do justice to James. And she recognizes that. She writes it here. She will require a new alphabet. She will require a new language just to be able to talk to him, because James is so brilliant. He is so much of a thinker that she decided to write this nonfiction book of how life has been. And it is something that I cannot even pretend to understand, to lose two of your children by their own choice and accepting that. And she says that here, that it is a book of radical acceptance, being able to live life and continue living. And there's a word that she uses, and I want to use it specifically, so I'll use her exact words. It was Vincent's death that made me begin to use that phrase every single day for the rest of my life. She says, here there remained that thought. Every single day for the rest of my life, I will be thinking about Vincent. And I will post maybe a more full length review on my Bookstagram, because for all the difficulty and sadness of reading this book, this book is also one of the best books I've read when it comes to dealing with death, which is so interesting for me, considering that this is a very, very unique experience that Yiyun has, and she literally calls it life at extremes. But I will close this little review with what she wrote, if you plan on reading this book. So, dear readers, if a mother using the word died or death offends your sensibilities, parentheses, a journalist from China featured my word choice in a profile of me, which led to disapproval among Chinese readers, close parentheses, if you believe that love is a magic word that will make everything all right, as did one of my readers who confronted me on a book tour asking me how I could have attempted S-word if I had ever loved my children. If you think I've erred by not putting my life in the loving hands of thy God, as an ex-friend of mine believes, telling me after Vincent's death that he was sent by God and taken away by God, so there was no reason for me to feel too sad. If you think the S-word is too depressing a subject, if the fact that all things insoluble in life remain insoluble is too bleak for you, and if you prefer that radical acceptance remain a foreign concept to you, this is a good time for you to stop reading. And she really does put it perfectly, because when you continue reading this book, there is no word spared. Every single word here is so precise and so crucial, and she is so thoughtful about her word choices. She would think of a word to describe her experience, and she would critique it and think to herself, am I using the right word? Am I diluting the emotion by using this word? She understands that words fall short, but sometimes the word is the closest thing you have, and she teeters that balance so, so beautifully. If you can deal with the difficult subject, Things in Nature Merely Grow. Brilliant, brilliant book. So after I finished filming that review, I remembered this quote from Things in Nature Merely Grow that I also wanted to share, so I thought I'd read it to you guys. Sometimes people ask me where I am in the grieving process, and I wonder whether they understand anything at all about losing someone. How lonely the dead would feel if the living were to stand up from death's shadow, clap their hands, dust their pants, and say to themselves and to the world, I am done with my grieving. From this point on, it's life as usual, business as usual. I don't want an endpoint to my sorrow. The death of a child is not a heat wave or a snowstorm, nor an obstacle race to rush through and win, nor an acute or chronic illness to recover from. What is grief but a word, a shortcut, a simplification of something much larger than that word? Thinking about my children is like air, like time. Thinking about them will only end when I reach the end of my life. And I think that passage perfectly encapsulates why I didn't want to call this book a book about grief. And she put it very, very beautifully. And I have not stopped thinking about this since I finished. And to close, I just wanted to do a quick reading update on my current read, which is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which is After Great Big Beautiful Life, my current reading run. My current read during my run. And I'm halfway through, guys. I'm doing good progress. It's fun. It's entertaining. I'm intrigued by the fantasy element of it. There are some parts of it that I'm just like, plot hole, but I am trying to suspend disbelief and letting the story take me places. And I think we are currently at 4-star territory, and I'm eating it up. I've been reading this maybe for 3 runs already. Maybe for 3 more runs, I should be able to finish this maybe by next week. So I'll keep you guys posted. So far, so good. Oh my gosh. Is that it? Is that all the books? That was actually quite fun. I was nervous not having a script to talk to you guys about. I wanted to do all of these book justice, and maybe at one point in time I'll have like bullet points just so I get to discuss these books with a lot more depth and nuance that they do deserve. But for now, it is my return to YouTube, so I hope you guys forgive me for this lack of structure. I want to enjoy this process. I want to ease myself back into this, follow my rhythm, and I already have an idea on what the next few videos will be, especially since June is Pride Month. So let's see. It will have to be balanced with the rest of my life, which is work, running, climbing, seeing my friends, reading my books, watching my movies, also posting on Instagram, which I really enjoy with my book account. So I'll make time. I'll make time. We'll figure it out. But if you guys enjoyed, I hope you stick around. Do a little subscribey, comment, like. Oh, wow. He's back at YouTube. And I'll see you guys at our usual spot for my next video.